Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take, all those sources, notes, expert guides, and boil them down into something you can actually use. And today, we're tackling something huge, something almost everyone bumps into if they're working or living internationally. Really cracking the code on speaking English fluently. You know that feeling, right? You've learned the grammar, the conditionals, the tenses, maybe even tons of vocabulary. But the second you need to speak naturally, you just freeze up. Well, that gap, the one between knowing about English and actually using it confidently, that's the biggest hurdle. We've pulled together some amazing source material here, focused around 9 really essential steps to bridge exactly that gap. Our mission today is to get you from just knowing English on paper to actually confidently speaking it.
Yeah, and that difference is just, it's everything, isn't it? So much frustration comes from that moment. You have to be spontaneous, you've studied, sure, but now you've got to perform. So what we're doing here is extracting the really practical, high-impact tips from these sources. The stuff that builds skill and cuts down on that hesitation when you're trying to think and speak. We really need to shift focus away from this impossible idea of perfect grammar and towards, just clear, confident communication, connecting with people.
Absolutely. So let's set the stage right away. When we talk about fluency in this deep dive, what are we actually aiming for? Because it's definitely not sounding like a walking dictionary.
No, not at all. We're really looking at 3 things: confidence, connection, and clarity. Can you get your ideas across? Can you connect with the person you're talking to without that paralyzing self-consciousness? If you can do that clearly and engagingly, you're fluent. That's the goal. And we're breaking this down into roughly 3 phases. First, the groundwork mindset stuff, cognitive shifts. Second, the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of speaking and how to fix things yourself. And third, getting it into your daily life, immersion, and actually using it. Okay, great. Let's dive right into that first phase, the cognitive foundation. The sources point to, well, maybe the biggest mistake learners make, even advanced ones. Tip number 1. Trying to speak without listening enough first. Listening is the cornerstone. It absolutely is. It's fun. You can't skip it. Think of listening as filling up your brain's library with how English actually sounds, the rhythm, the natural sentence structures, the common phrases. If you try to build every single sentence from scratch, mentally picking the verb, conjugating it, finding the right preposition, you'll always be too slow. It won't sound natural because you haven't absorbed the patterns. You need loads of input first.
Okay, so just having English on in the background helps a bit for exposure, I guess. But the sources really stress active listening, and the key technique they push is shadowing. It sounds intense. How do you actually do it effectively?
Shadowing is where listening turns into actual physical skill building. It's pretty simple in concept. You pick some audio or video, maybe a podcast clip, a bit from YouTube, whatever, and you repeat what the speaker is saying immediately after them, like an echo. You're not waiting for the sentence to end. You're trying to mimic their sounds, their rhythm, their intonation, almost in real time.
Right. Okay, so if I'm, say, an intermediate learner, how do I pick the right stuff to shadow? Does it need to be something I understand completely?
That's a really good question. You want something where you understand maybe 80 to 90% of the words. If it's too hard, you'll just be struggling to figure out the meaning and you won't be able to focus on the sound and the flow. The magic of shadowing is that it trains what the source calls muscle memory for speech.
Muscle memory for speech. Interesting. What does that mean exactly?
Mm-hmm.
Like physically?
Yeah, think about it. When you speak your native language, your mouth, tongue, throat, they make all these complex shapes and movements automatically, instantly. If you only read English or study grammar rules, your brain knows the word, maybe. But the physical pathways to actually make the sound correctly, with the right rhythm, the right flow, they're weak, untrained. Shadowing forces your mouth and brain to work together. It synchronizes the sound you hear with the physical act of producing it.
Ah, I see. So it directly trains the physical part of talking.
Exactly. And it makes a huge difference to spontaneity. You might start by just whispering along, then maybe speaking it right after them, then maybe with a slight delay, which is closer to a real conversation pace. It forces your mouth to learn the choreography of English sounds. That's a great way to put it. Okay, so it turns passive knowledge into a physical skill. Now, building on that, we hit what might be the biggest thing holding back even pretty advanced speakers. Tip number 2, you've got to stop translating in your head. Learn to think in English. That translation step. It's the killer of speed. If every thought starts in your native language, then needs translating, then grammar checking, then checking again, then finally speaking, that whole chain reaction just adds so much lag. It's what makes speech slow, hesitant, often quite unnatural sounding.
And the solution suggested sounds so simple, but maybe quite hard.
Yeah.
Narrate your daily life to yourself, but in English. Internally,
Wow.
it sounds exhausting at first.
It definitely takes mental effort, yeah. But it's crucial because it builds that direct link between a concept and the English words for it. The sources say, start really simple, really mundane, like, okay, I'm turning off my alarm now. I'm making coffee. Oh, the bus is late today. You're trying to connect the idea of brushing your teeth directly to the English phrase, I'm brushing my teeth, without your native language getting in the middle.
But okay, let's be real. Someone tries this. They're narrating making breakfast, and suddenly they need a word they don't know, like spatula. They hit a wall. If they stop to look it up, the flow's gone. Would they do that? Yeah, and that's exactly where people often get frustrated and just stop. The absolute key is keep the flow going. Don't stop.
If you hit a word you don't know, just skip it mentally, or use a placeholder sound, or even just use the word from your own language for a second. Make a mental note and immediately keep going with the English narration. The goal isn't perfect vocabulary during the exercise. It's training your brain to keep thinking in English, to keep that pipeline open. Look up spatula right after you finish your little narration practice.
Okay, that makes sense. Maintain the process over perfect execution at that moment. We talked about defining fluency earlier. How does this internal narration idea connect to that definition?
It gives you a way to measure it, almost. The source defines fluency basically as the speed between your thought and your speech. This whole internal narration thing is designed purely to shrink that gap. You're cutting down the processing time by forcing that direct link. When the thought pops up and the English phrase comes out almost instantly without that translation detour, that's fluency in action. Right. So we've got the listening foundation from tip 1, the mental rewiring with tip 2. But none of that works if you're too scared to even open your mouth, which leads straight into the huge mindset piece. Tip number 3. Go for progress, not perfection. This is probably the biggest one psychologically. The fear of making mistakes. It's the number one reason people don't speak or don't speak much in any language they're learning. It makes you hesitate, you hold back, you practice less, and so you improve less. It's a vicious cycle. Learners often wait until they feel ready or perfect, and honestly, that day never really comes.
Oh, we see it all the time. People who can read complex articles but are terrified to order a coffee. We need to completely reframe what a mistake actually means when you're learning. We absolutely have to. And the source material has a great way of putting it. Mistakes aren't failures. They're just proof that you're learning. They're data points showing you where you need a bit more practice.
Think about it. Native speakers mess up all the time. We stumble over words, use slightly weird grammar, start a sentence, and have to backtrack.
Yeah, that's true.
The difference is we don't usually freeze up and have an internal crisis about it. We just correct ourselves or keep going. The core truth here is fluency comes from volume of practice, not from perfect quality control on every single utterance. If you manage to say 10 sentences, even if they had flaws, and you got your message across, that's way, way better than staying silent for 5 minutes trying to craft one absolutely perfect sentence. So the message is simple, maybe tough to swallow, but simple. Just speak more. The sheer amount you speak is more important for progress than whether each attempt is flawless. Precisely. You have to embrace the awkwardness, the occasional mistake. Every single error is actually a necessary little step towards making it automatic. When you let go of needing to be perfect, you free up so much mental energy just to communicate, which is the real goal, right? Connection. Okay, that wraps up the mindset shifts nicely. Moving into our second section, the technical mechanics. So if section 1 was about building the confidence and the mental pathways to speak, this is more about refining how it sounds and figuring out what to improve. Tip number 4. Record yourself speaking. This one's incredibly powerful because it's like having your own very objective coach. We just don't hear ourselves accurately as we speak. Our voice sounds different inside our head. Listening back to a recording gives you that objective mirror. It shows you things you completely miss in the heat of a real conversation.
That makes sense. In a real chat, your brain's juggling so much, understanding the other person, thinking of your reply, social cues. There's just no bandwidth left to critically analyze your own pronunciation or grammar in real time. So what's the method here?
It's actually really simple and doesn't take much time. Just record yourself for, say, 1 minute. Talk about something easy, low stakes, what you did this morning, your plans for the weekend, why you like a certain movie. Then, and this is crucial, listen back immediately, but but listen back like you're an analyst, like you're coaching someone else.
Okay, but how do you stop yourself from just getting discouraged? You listen back and all you hear is, oh, that sounds awful. How do you listen constructively? What specific things should you be listening for?
Yeah, that's the danger, isn't it? Just feeling bad. No, you need to listen for patterns, not just isolated slip-ups. The sources highlight 3 main things to hunt for.
Consistent pronunciation issues. Is there a specific vowel sound you always get wrong? Or maybe a consonant blend like thick or stree that you consistently stumble over? Find the patterns.
Okay, patterns of pronunciation errors. What's second?
Your speaking speed and flow. Are you consistent? Or do you maybe start sentences really fast and then trail off? Or have big, unnatural pauses right in the middle while you search for words? That kind of jerky rhythm can be tiring for a listener.
Right. And the third pattern, I think this one's super revealing, is overuse of filler words. All the ums and ohs and likes and you knows.
Yeah, exactly. Those filler words are often the audible proof of that translation lag we talked about earlier. They're the noise your brain makes while it's stuck searching. When you listen back to your 1-minute recording and actually count how many times you said or like, it makes the habit incredibly obvious. You externalize it. And just being aware of it is the massive first step to reducing it, maybe replacing it with a silent pause instead.
Okay. So tip 4 isn't just about finding problems. It's about making those patterns conscious so your brain starts self-correcting next time. It really is like having your own free coach. All right, let's move from those general speech patterns to something more specific, covered in tip number 7. Mastering the music of English, focusing on intonation and rhythm.
Yes, this is so key and often gets missed. Learners can get really hung up on nailing every single individual sound perfectly, but their speech still sounds, well, robotic or flat. Why? Because they haven't grasped the rhythm, the intonation, the music.
Why is rhythm so important in English? The source calls it a musical language. What does that mean practically?
Well, English is what linguists call a stress-timed language. Unlike some languages where each syllable gets roughly the same amount of time, syllable-timed English has peaks and valleys. We emphasize certain words, the important ones, and we kind of rush over or reduce the less important ones. This creates a characteristic rhythm, a sort of bounce. If you pronounce every single word with equal weight and time, it just sounds unnatural to a native ear. It scripts out the music.
Okay, stress time versus syllable timed. So how do you know which words to stress and which to rush over?
The key distinction is usually between content words and function words. Content words carry the main, meaning nouns, main verbs, adjectives, adverbs. These are the ones we typically stress. Function words are the little grammatical words, articles like a, the, prepositions like to, for, in, conjunctions like and, but. These are usually unstressed, spoken quickly, and often reduced.
Reduce. Can you give an example? How does a function word sound different when it's unstressed?
Sure. Take a simple word like to. If you say it very carefully slowly, you hear the full oo sound, dunna. But in natural fast speech, it often reduces to just a schwa sound like to, or it might even blend in more.
Like if you say, I want to go, you probably don't say, I want to go. You likely say something closer to, I want to go, or I want to go. The two gets squashed. Same with for. We rarely say the full for in conversation. It becomes fur. Right. So if you're listening, what you actually hear is more like, I want to go for lunch.
Yeah.
And if you're only trained on the perfect dictionary pronunciation, that connected speech is really hard to follow.
Exactly. So the practical advice here isn't necessarily get a perfect American accent or get a perfect British accent. It's mimic the music. Copy the cadence of speakers you like.
When you're shadowing or just listening actively, pay really close attention to which words pop out, stressed, and which ones seem quick and quiet, reduced. Notice the rise and fall of their pitch. If you start copying that rhythm, that music, the source material says your speech will automatically sound smoother, clearer, and much more natural, regardless of your specific accent. You get authenticity without forcing an accent that isn't yours. That's a much more achievable goal for most people. Okay, this leads us perfectly into the third and maybe most critical phase, application. We've worked on the brain and the mouth mechanics, but now we have to actually use it. Tip number 5 is blunt. You have to practice with real people. Yeah, this is where the real acceleration happens. If you only ever practice alone, reading out loud or doing exercises, you're just not ready for the chaos of real conversation. You know, people interrupt, they ask questions you didn't expect, they have different accents, you need to think on your feet. Talking to actual humans is the single best way to improve, and honestly, it's the only way to build real, solid confidence.
Okay, but for someone feeling nervous, and that's most learners just saying talk to people isn't enough, let's get specific. What kind of structured ways can they start? Where do they find these people?
Good point. Starting structured is definitely easier. Things like joining an English-speaking club lots exist online now, or maybe locally. Everyone there is in the same boat, trying to improve, so it's a very supportive environment usually. Or, for one-on-one practice, language exchange partners are fantastic. You can find them on apps. Tandem and HelloTalk are mentioned specifically in the sources. These apps connect you with native speakers who want to learn your language, so you trade time. Help them practice, they help you practice. It's low pressure.
But even in those apps or clubs, there's still that initial hurdle. How do you get over the fear of starting a conversation, especially if the other person sounds way more fluent than you?
Right, that fear is real. Couple of things help. First, just keep reminding yourself why everyone's there, especially on the apps. They're either learners too, or they specifically signed up to help learners. They expect you to make mistakes. It can help to have a plan. Maybe start the chat by being clear. Hi, I'm working on my speaking confidence. Is it okay if I practice with you? Please feel free to correct my big mistakes. Setting that expectation helps relax both sides.
That's good advice. Be upfront about it.
Yeah. And second, if you encounter someone with an accent you find difficult, don't just freeze or give up. Be polite about it. You can say something like, sorry, I'm still getting used to different accents. Could you possibly say that again a little slower? Turning that potential breakdown into a learning moment actually builds confidence. Because confidence doesn't come from never failing. It comes from knowing you can handle small communication bumps. Okay, adapt rather than avoid. That makes sense. Now, switching gears slightly, let's talk about what we say. Tip number 6. Expanding your vocabulary, but doing it in context. We know just memorizing lists doesn't really work for speaking. Why not? Because list learning tends to build passive vocabulary. These are words you recognize when you read them, maybe, but you can't pull them out of your head quickly and use them accurately when you're speaking. They're stored in the wrong mental filing cabinet, basically. Speaking needs active vocabulary, words you can grab and use spontaneously.
So the effective way is immediate application. As soon as you learn a new word, use it. Right away. In context. Let's break that down. How does someone actually do that effectively?
Okay, so you come across a new word you think is useful. Maybe you read it or heard it. The goal cognitively is to immediately force your brain to use it in different ways. Try to create, say, 3 to 5 different sentences using that word, maybe varying the grammar or the situation. This practice helps lodge it in your active memory. It connects the word not just to its definition, but to how it actually functions in a sentence, who uses it, what other words often go with it, its collocations. Let's use the example from the source, the word challenge. How would you apply this process to really learn it actively? So you learn challenge. First, maybe use it as a noun. Learning English pronunciation is a big challenge. Okay, then try it as a verb. I need to challenge myself more at work. Then maybe as an adjective. This has been a challenging week. You could even try different tenses or related forms. He challenged the decision. She finds the course challenging. Just playing with it like that, creating those different contexts, forces your brain to really grapple with the word and store it much more effectively than just seeing challenge a difficult task on a list.
So it's about building connections around the word, not just memorizing a definition. And it sounds like prioritizing useful words, ones that can be nouns, verbs, adjectives, or appear in common phrases, is smarter than learning obscure words.
Definitely. Focus on high-frequency words and common phrases first, the ones you'll actually hear and need to use. And don't forget, the sources also remind us that just consuming content, reading books, watching shows, listening to podcasts you enjoy is a fantastic way to absorb vocabulary more naturally, almost effortlessly, because you see and hear words repeatedly in their real environment. Okay, makes sense. We've covered a lot of the how-to actions. Now, tip number 8 really ties it all together. Integrating English into your daily routine. This is about making it a habit, not just homework.
Yeah, this perspective shift is crucial. If learning English feels like this separate, burdensome task you have to schedule, eventually your motivation will probably dip and you might stop. To really get fluent, English needs to become part of the fabric of your day, something unavoidable, integrated. This is how you get immersion without having to move to another country. Okay, so we need concrete, practical ways to weave it in. What are some of those automatic integration strategies the sources recommend?
It's about hijacking routines you already have. First, targeted listening during dead time. Instead of just music or silence during your commute or while making breakfast, choose a specific English podcast or news segment to listen to actively for those 15-20 minutes. It slots in without needing new time.
Okay, use existing time slots. What else?
Second, change your environment. Switch the language setting on your phone, on your computer, on Netflix or your social media apps. This forces constant, tiny interactions with English all day long. It might be annoying at first, yes, but that friction forces your brain to learn the words needed just to navigate your digital life.
The forced interaction method. Clever. Any others?
And third, use the tools available. Chatbots or AI language partners. They're getting really good. You can use them for low-stakes practice anytime. Maybe tell your AI assistant about your day in English or ask it questions. It forces output, even when a human partner isn't around. It can also help reinforce that internal narration practice from tip 2.
So the cumulative effect of all this integration isn't just more practice time, is it? It feels like it changes how your brain treats English overall.
It absolutely does. Fluency happens much faster when English stops being that subject I study and becomes a tool I use to live my life. When it's woven into your day like that, the neural pathways are getting reinforced constantly, automatically. Your brain stops fighting it and starts adapting because English becomes necessary for daily functioning. That constant low-level exposure keeps everything active, keeps that speed between thought and speech fast. Okay, that brings us through 8 really powerful steps. But like any big goal, whether it's fitness or learning an instrument or language, all these techniques rely on one final, absolutely essential element. Tip number 9, yes, patience, consistency, and really understanding the power of the compounding effect. It's so easy for language learners to get discouraged because they expect progress to be fast and linear. The sources offer this crucial reassurance. Getting fluent takes time, it just does. But it is, quote, 100% possible if you stick with the process consistently.
Right. You could have a really intense study weekend and feel like you didn't leap forward much, and then feel disheartened. We tend to overestimate what one huge effort can do and massively underestimate the power of small, regular actions over months or years.
That's the classic trap. The real power is in those small daily efforts, not big and frequent bursts. If you cram for 4 hours once every 2 weeks, your brain has to keep rebooting its English mode each time. The pathways get cold, the muscle memory fades, and the source gives a really concrete metric here. It says practicing for even just 15 minutes a day makes a huge difference. 15 minutes. But it has to be consistent, ideally, every day. That consistency keeps language active, keeps the pathways warm, and solidifies the small gains you made yesterday.
Wow, just 15 minutes a day. Whether that's shadowing or doing that internal narration or a quick chat on an app, it's not just adding 15 minutes. It's like multiplying the effect of all the other work because it keeps it going.
Exactly. It's the bridge that turns passive knowledge into active skill. You compare someone cramming for hours once a week versus someone doing a focused 15 minutes every single day, the daily person will win the fluency race every time. They're allowing those cognitive shifts to happen gradually and stick. So the final takeaway message, maybe the most important one, is really small daily actions are more powerful than big, rare efforts. Consistency is what turns effort into actual usable skill.
That really pulls it all together. It's a fantastic roadmap, moving from the mental game to the physical practice, and finally to weaving it into life. Let's just quickly recap those 3 main pillars we identified from the 9 steps.
Sure. We started with that cognitive foundation. You need to listen in shadow, that's tip 1, to build the physical capability. And you need to think directly in English tip 2 to cut out the translation delay. Right, then came the technical mechanics. Use recording tip 4 to become your own objective coach and spot those patterns. And master the music tip 7, focusing on rhythm and intonation, not just isolated sounds. And finally, application and immersion. Integrate English into your daily life, tip 8. Use new vocabulary and context immediately, tip 6, to make it active. And crucially, practice with real people, tip 5, to build genuine confidence and adaptability. And all of it, absolutely all of it, rests on consistency, tip 9.
Yeah, when you break it down like that, the huge challenge of getting fluent seems much more manageable. It becomes a set of concrete habits. But for you listening right now, maybe feeling fired up, but also a bit, okay, where do we even start? What's the very first thing you should do?
Yeah, great question. Avoid getting overwhelmed. The core idea is progress, not perfection, right? So don't try to implement all 9 things tomorrow. Our advice, based on the sources, is pick just one. One step that feels like a change from how you currently practice. Maybe it's shadowing, maybe it's recording yourself, maybe it's finding a language partner. Just pick one and commit to trying it for the next, say, 3 days. Prove to yourself that adding one small habit is doable. Okay, just start with one. That's achievable. And to leave you with something to really think about, building on this idea that consistency is king. We heard how powerful just 15 minutes a day can be if it happens reliably. That means automating it. So here's the thought to chew on. What specific 15-minute English-speaking activity could you link to something you already do every single day without fail? Could you decide that the moment you get on the train, you shadow one specific podcast for 15 minutes? Could you set an alarm to use a language app for 15 minutes right after you brush your teeth? Find that trigger, that existing habit you can piggyback onto. Lock it in. Because if you automate the consistency, you make that shift from just studying English to actually living in English almost inevitable. And that is your fastest path to real fluency.